Hello and welcome to episode 379 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. How's it going, Ian?
It's going, Jason. It's going. We've made it to the middle of the week. One World Cup semifinal down, one ongoing.
Ongoing right now.
As we record, we're recording so Jason can watch the second half uninterrupted.
Yes, if I'm at all distracted during this recording, it's definitely because I'm watching Argentina-England right now, or as I've been putting it in my own head, our eerily Argentinas versus British Airways.
Exactly.
No score yet, but by the time you listen, you will know who will be playing across the couple rivers here in New Jersey for the final.
And what a collection of aviation that will be when that comes together this weekend. It'll be interesting to see whether it's a busier than the Super Bowl was or not. It'll definitely be more internationally focused. So that'll be interesting to see.
I've been solely judging how popular, how busy, or how much inbound traffic from out of town there will actually be for the World Cup final, solely by judging the pricing for what United wants for my typical LaGuardia to Dulles flight, which when I was looking months ago, came to the realization, oh no, I need to fly on the 20th, the day after the final. And United had already come to that conclusion before I did and was charging something like $900 to fly to Dulles. And over the course of the months and weeks, that dropped all the way down to like $130. So I don't think demand is quite where everyone hoped it would be, or maybe they're all just local, or maybe no one wants to fly LaGuardia to Dulles, which is completely reasonable.
I think that's the most reasonable explanation. We'll look at it over the weekend and see what we can see and talk more about it next week. Let's get into this week's news because boy, oh boy, is there news. Late last week, a Ryanair operated by Malta Air 737-800 suffered an uncontained engine failure that led to one of the cabin windows shattering, which then led to a passenger finding themselves partially outside the aircraft. And if this is sounding somewhat familiar, this is roughly the same sequence of events that took place on Southwest 1308 a few years ago. We don't know at this point if it's the same issue with the engine. We do know that the engine in question for the Malta Air flight in this incident happened to lose fan blades, but we don't know if that was the cause of the engine failure or if that happened in the course of the engine failure. The investigation is still in early days. Thankfully, this passenger was wearing their seatbelt. The incident happened at the beginning of the flight as they were climbing through 15,000 feet. This passenger was wearing their seatbelt and only their basically head, neck, and shoulders was brought outside the aircraft. They were able to be brought back in. They were reseated. They were taken to the hospital. Jason, have you heard an update on the passenger's condition?
I think they're okay.
Yeah, I heard that they were okay. I didn't have anything.
I think they're going to be fine. Luckily, this was at a much lower altitude than the Southwest incident happened. If this was later in the phase of flight at a higher altitude, this would probably be a very different story. Unfortunately, probably very similar to the Southwest incident. Thankfully, not the case here. Luckily, this person was seatbelted in, not really what the seatbelt is there for, but it'll do the job in this case anyway. I don't know if they test for window blown out at altitude and passenger trying to be sucked out the window.
Don't.
Not why it's there, but it worked anyway. Yet another PSA, very compelling PSA, to wear your seatbelt at all times when you're in your seat. Thankfully, there was somewhere else on board this aircraft to reseat this passenger, though I think in this case they would have moved them literally anywhere other than that seat, even if all 180 seats were full. In that case, I'd prefer sitting in the lavatory before putting myself back in that seat. But this is not a good story, and it has the potential to be much worse than this story currently is, depending on where the investigation goes. And who's leading this investigation?
That's a really interesting question, Jason, because the NTSB announced. So let's talk about where this happened, first of all. The aircraft departed Thessaloniki in Greece. The aircraft made it over the border slightly at some phase of flight into North Macedonia, then returned to Greece. The aircraft is a Boeing 737-800, which was built in the United States. So the NTSB, as the investigative agency in the country of manufacture, is a party to that investigation. Greece said it will conduct a safety investigation. The NTSB says that the North Macedonians are leading the investigation into this accident.
That's a strange one.
Looking at where the engine failure occurred, it happened in Greece. It happened over Greece.
So they're taking the point they turned around to...
I guess?
What's the standing here? That's really, really weird. I would expect...
I mean, maybe behind the scenes, Greece has delegated the investigation to the North Macedonians.
Between the flight departing and returning to Greece, the aircraft being operated by Malta Air, I would think between Malta and Greece, EASA would have a say here, or a European agency, not North Macedonia. That is just really, really strange.
So we'll see.
I mean, not EASA. They're not a safety investigator, but just really strange. North Macedonia doesn't make any sense, but I haven't heard any objections, at least in the public, to that.
No, I mean, if they want to take the investigation, if they want to run the investigation, and if I guess everyone is on board with that, sure, why not? I'm sure the NTSB will have a lot of expertise to contribute, given the similarities that we've seen thus far between the Southwest incident, which was Southwest 1380, not 1308, as I said a few moments ago. And that particular incident led to a host of airworthiness directives about the CFM56 engine and eventually a redesign of the engine housing, the nacelle and the cowling.
And that's exactly why I say, depending on where this investigation goes, the news is going to either stay as it is or get a lot worse. Because if it turns out that this aircraft already had the work for the airworthiness directive, which I believe had basically a due date of sometime in 2028, if this aircraft and this engine suffered from the same failure and had nearly the same outcome, but already had the work conducted to meet the airworthiness directive, there's going to be a lot of questions for Boeing and a lot of questions for really everyone operating the 737, at least the 800 or the NG family.
Yeah, so we will keep a close eye on this, especially to understand who is actually running the investigation, whether Greece takes over, whether North Macedonia continues to run it, whether it gets delegated perhaps to the NTSB, we don't know, but definitely keeping an eye on this one, and we'll follow up accordingly.
Yeah. Today I learned that the Aviation Accident and Incident Investigation Committee of North Macedonia is definitely a thing and investigates things that happens in its airspace. This didn't happen in its airspace, but yeah, they investigate a lot of paraglider incidents, which is interesting.
I did not know that. So
me neither, until I loaded up their website, and they use very enthusiastic and nice stock imagery of paraglider accidents to represent its investigations, where I don't think they look that pretty if they're investigating it. But nice website.
All right. Let's move over to another investigation where we have a preliminary report from German investigators on the Lufthansa 787-9. What we now know officially was a gear retraction at the gate in Frankfurt.
Interesting. You subbed out the word failure we used in the past for retraction. That leads me to believe we know what happened.
Well, yeah.
Why it happened, at least.
So let's back up and talk about what happened. And the bottom line here is that the pin that holds the gear in place to make sure that it cannot be retracted while on the ground was not installed. Now let's talk about why all of this was happening. The aircraft was at the gate prior to its next flight and undergoing a maintenance procedure as engineers were attempting to resolve a fault with the main landing gear doors. As part of that maintenance action, the landing gear lever is required to be in the up position. As part of that maintenance action, one of the, I would argue, extremely important criteria for performing any type of maintenance with the landing gear while the aircraft is on the ground is to ensure that all of the gear downlock pins have been installed correctly.
I see where you're going with this. Were they, in fact, all installed correctly?
The 4 pins on the main landing gear were, in fact, installed correctly.
Oh, that's great. That's where the issue was. They were checking for a gear door indication on the main landing gear, right?
Yes. According to the BFU, quote, after the aircraft had been lifted up, the BFU documented that the landing gear downlock pin was not inserted into the designated hole on the nose landing gear and was not in the vicinity of the nose landing gear either.
Uh-oh.
That sentence is important because, as we talked about in the initial discussion of this incident, the not in the vicinity of the nose landing gear either is important because there have been issues in the past, especially with the British Airways 787.
With the wrong slot.
Exactly. The pin was inserted into a wrong hole. Boeing has since addressed that on new build aircraft, and they have told airlines how to address that on existing aircraft. So the German investigators say this is not what happened.
None of that works if you simply leave the pin in the box where the pins come from and don't even install it in the first place, whether it's the right hole or the wrong hole. Apparently, it was just left in the storage box and never inserted. And now they've got a whole host of other warnings and indications that will need remedying beyond just the main landing gear door.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they also didn't solve the main landing gear door because they fully broke that at this point. That is now also destroyed. So, that is, you hate to see it. This is why checklists exist. This is why another set of eyes exist. You hate to see such a, I'm not going to call it stupid, but such a basic human error leading to such a dangerous incident. But it happens.
Yeah. And that's where the final report will come in, because obviously there will be multiple interviews with everyone involved to understand, okay, what exactly were you doing? What exactly were you doing? How did we get here? And do we need to revise any procedures? Obviously, the checklist was not followed precisely, but why is the question, was somebody distracted? And this is what I wanted to talk about as well, because the preliminary report notes that a total of 34 people were in or around the aircraft at the time, including 28 staff or crew on board the aircraft and 6 people on the ground around the aircraft. That's a lot of people. And to me, that says that there may have been time pressure because the crew was preparing the aircraft for departure. The maintenance engineers were on board trying to fix the gear doors. What was the interaction with them? All of these human factor issues coming up again. It's easy to say, they didn't put the gear pin in. Okay, that's true, but why? And what do we need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again?
Well, at least they put the pin in the main landing gears. That's important.
That is important.
They got 2 or 3. It's good.
It wasn't like the Simpsons episode where Homer...
Crazy Clown Airways, was it?
Where he flips the gear lever and
Flyboy
jumps and just falls onto the ground. No, not like that, thankfully.
Could have been, though.
There's always next time. Last night, so the 14th of July, I had a real 45 to 60 seconds of panic.
Why? What happened? Did you drop dinner or what happened? That's a very short window of panic.
In the process of making dinner, actually.
It's always while you're making dinner.
If anything's going to happen in the aviation industry, it'll be while I'm making dinner. I received, as did anyone else who has push notifications for Squawk 7700 alerts on their phone from the Flight Radar 24 app, 9 near simultaneous squawk alerts.
That's a lot of squawk alerts.
You
so
pull up the
7700 general
emergency.
Happening.
Exactly. 9 of them. And I open up the app and I see the map above London is red.
Oh, that's not good.
That's never happened before.
Yeah, I mean, you might get a couple every now and then, but 7 at the same time, I
In the
can't
same
recall.
location.
I can't recall that ever happening anywhere.
And so my first thought was, oh no, something has gone terribly wrong with the app or with the site. Like, what is going on here? But then, I start clicking on the aircraft and they're all bound for Gatwick. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. So zoom in on Gatwick. And there's a BA A320 sitting on the runway with a bunch of emergency vehicles around it. And then things start to fall into place. So what happened was British Airways flight 2673 from Palma de Mallorca to London's Gatwick Airport on approach.
Name a more British route. You can't.
Yes. Yeah, you cannot. Well, maybe Malaga, Manchester or something.
Mm-hmm.
So this British Airways flight on approach realizes it has an issue, a hydraulic issue, which will likely affect the nose gear steering for the aircraft. So they decide that they're going to stop on the runway and get inspected and see if they do in fact have nose gear steering. It is determined they do not. And so they need a tug to come and pull them off the runway. This is going to take some time. The aircraft was on the runway for about 30 minutes.
Now, you say the runway. For those not familiar with London Gatwick, Ian, how many runways does London Gatwick Airport have?
It is the world's busiest single runway airport.
There you go. And there's the problem.
Well, not only is it a single runway airport, this week during the overnight hours, they're using the backup runway.
Oh, for who? I didn't know that was ever used by commercial operations.
Yes. So it can be used, but you can only use one runway. I think we talked about this, who knows how long ago.
Who can remember?
On the podcast about Gatwick. So Gatwick is it's a 2-runway airport, but you can only use one of them at a time.
Yeah, because they're like 18 feet apart from each other.
Exactly.
They're
one of them
Newark.
is a glorified taxiway, and one of them is an actual purpose-built runway. What is normally a taxiway can be used as a secondary runway and is used when maintenance is needed and things like that. So that's what they're doing overnight hours this week between 2200 and 0400 through this week. So they have that main runway closed. They're landing on 08 left, which is the backup runway, and that aircraft is now stuck on the runway.
So they've got 0 of 2 operational runways at that point.
Exactly. And because of how that runway operates, aircraft are already in sequence and starting to hold. Then there is an emergency aircraft on the runway for a half hour. That leads to 9 aircraft nearly simultaneously declaring fuel emergencies and diverting away.
And what local time did this happen?
11:15, everything started.
So right around the time where like Heathrow starts to close for the night. So that might not even be a viable backup option.
One British Airways aircraft diverted to Heathrow. And then there was EasyJet, mostly EasyJet, some Wizz aircraft diverting to places like Stansted, Luton, Bristol, and Birmingham. And so there were 14 total diversions. There were 10 total fuel emergencies, but one of those was a British Airways aircraft that was able to land back at Gatwick after it had reopened. Gatwick was completely shut for about 45 minutes. Oof. So I've never seen that before.
No. I mean, London is funny. There's so much discussion and back and forth over the years about expanding Heathrow and adding a 3rd runway, which would be incredibly difficult to do at Heathrow because there's just really no space for that. But Gatwick, way down south, is, as we said, the world's busiest, technically, single runway airport and seems to have plenty of space around it to expand. So,
well, the idea here is to add the 3rd runway at Heathrow, and apparently that's moving forward, though I'll believe that when I see it. But with Gatwick, so the plan is to shift basically all of the terminal area north so that you can shift that taxiway north so that you can have 2 parallel runways. That's the eventual plan. Again, believe it when I see it.
Yeah, so don't see that happening anytime soon.
But when Gatwick,
it makes so much more sense. If London really needs more air capacity, expanding Gatwick just seems like the sensible, logical thing to do because 1 runway here is we've seen a number of times, whether it's the Virgin 747 way back when, with one of its main landing gears just wasn't there. Remember that? That closed the runway down for a good while, going back like 10 years now. Probably more than 10 years.
That was more than 10 years. I think that was before I started at Flight Radar 24. So
yeah, it's been a minute, but this happens every now and then. And with a single runway, there isn't exactly much alternative except going elsewhere. And you really don't want to end up at Stansted when you're not expecting to be.
No one does. And that's what happened to at least one of the EasyJet flights that diverted to Stansted. The passengers remained on the aircraft for hours after they landed because EasyJet doesn't have facilities there. And when you land at midnight, no one else is around. So it took a few hours to find someone who could help get passengers off the aircraft. Then they couldn't refuel because they don't have agreements at Stansted. So they said, you're on your own. We'll reimburse you for however much it costs to get home from Stansted. So one passenger, I think, got home at about 6 a.m. because then they had to wait hours for baggage because they don't have a baggage handler at Stansted.
This is why you never check a bag.
I mean, among other reasons, yes. But of course, coming back from holiday, I would say
no excuse. Never check a bag. Nope. Never check a bag.
Jason, I'm going to rent you some children and then see how feasible that is.
Can it at least be your children? I know them already.
Yeah.
Okay. So you just want me to babysit for a weekend so you can go do other things.
Okay. Well, that did not take long for you to catch on to that one.
I'm on to you, Ian.
All right. Hey, speaking of EasyJet, Apollo Global Management has thrown its private equity hat into the ring, offering more than Castlelake was or is for EasyJet.
This sounds familiar. It's like you can't just have a hostile takeover and dismantling of an entity these days. There's got to be multiple bidders to take over and then dismantle an entity.
Well,
or not.
Or not. So Apollo's offering £7.15, which is about 3.5% more than Castlelake's £6.90 bid per share for EasyJet. Apollo, for its part, is much more attractive as far as the EasyJet board and current investors are concerned. So EasyJet's board says now they are likely to recommend Apollo's bid rather than Castlake's bid, saying, quote, a superior outcome for EasyJet shareholders by providing a higher cash value than Castlake's latest proposal per share. In addition, the proposed transaction offers the opportunity for eligible EasyJet shareholders who participate in the stub equity alternative to have exposure to EasyJet's future growth and long-term value creation potential alongside the Apollo funds. So basically, Castlake's bid wipes out EasyJet's current shareholders by taking the company private. Apollo says, no, that's not exactly what we're going to do. The airline would stay as is as far as Apollo's offer is concerned. However, the one big question here is the same one with regards to Castlelake, is how they would comply with EU ownership and control rules. Because a majority of the shares have to be owned by an EU citizen.
Oh, maybe
I'm not sure who they're going to find.
I don't know. It can't be me. Can't be you. Who do we know in the EU? John Walton? Does he want EasyJet?
I feel like probably not.
I don't think he does. It's definitely an interesting twist that an entity will come in and own EasyJet, but not dismantle it completely, which is nice, but does make me wonder, are they going to try to pull a kind of a Southwest turnaround like we saw Elliott Investment do? But I'm just not sure what added revenue there is to wring and squeeze out of EasyJet, because EasyJet already wrings and squeezes out every ounce of revenue from its current passengers. It's not like they've been behind the 8 ball for decades and don't charge everyone for everything like Southwest did. So very interested to see what exactly their plans are for increased revenue over the years, because this is a very different beast than Southwest, where there was tons of money being left on the table. I don't think that's the case with EasyJet.
No, and for its part, Apollo is no stranger to owning an airline. They own 50% of Atlas Air.
Yeah, notably not a commercial airline.
Right. But what I'm saying is like they're not naive about.
No, they know what they're getting into. 100%. I am just interested to see what they can do to turn around EasyJet, because they are not a money-making operation right now. And they already charge for things that Southwest eventually started charging for, up to and including things like priority boarding that doesn't exist. You pay for it, and there is no priority boarding, but you've paid for it. Just raise fares wholesale across the board. That's an option. Not a long-term sustainable option, but short-term, that'll work, I guess. Guess we're going to find out.
Well, Apollo has until the 7th of August to submit their official bid, or a binding bid, and we'll see what they have to say. I mean, it's super interesting to me how Castlelake came with this, and then what was Apollo? Were they already considering this, or is this something where like, well, we don't want Castlelake to have it, and we think we can do a better job, so yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah, everyone just loves a good old-fashioned bidding war. I mean, back when we were talking about Spirit so long ago, what exactly did JetBlue see in Spirit? Was it also planning on gobbling up Spirit before Frontier put its bid in, or did it just accelerate their plans when Frontier announced it? I would assume that if one capital management group is sniffing around, they probably all were to some degree, but there are only a few out there that actually have the expertise and the capital to pull it off.
We will keep an eye on this and know in 3 weeks' time whether or not one of these equity firms submits a binding bid and which one EasyJet goes for. Or maybe there could be a third bidder by then. Who knows?
Who could be you? No, it can't be you.
No, it can't be me. Well, I can submit 49%. But are you going to loan me the cash?
Well, they're not making any money. So, no, that would be a poor investment.
Let's look at Boeing a little bit as we gear up for Farnborough in the next week. Boeing took in 121 orders in June, a large collection going to your favorite airline and mine, Unidentified Airlines.
So does Boeing call it unidentified and Airbus calls it undisclosed? Are these actually different airlines? Do we have competing ghost airlines?
I guess.
That's exciting.
Yeah. During June, Boeing also delivered 64 aircraft, 43 737s, 5 767 freighters, 3 777 freighters, and 13 787s, bringing its first half numbers to 386 net orders. That is gross orders minus cancellations and accounting fuzziness, where there's a bucket of aircraft that Boeing has on its order books that it says, no, we're never going to actually deliver these. So they get
those are our favorite.
Yeah. And 280 deliveries for the first half of the year. So on a good pace.
Seems to have figured things out.
Yeah. Now, looking ahead, Reuters has a pair of reports about a couple airlines in the Middle East where these are not outside the realm of possibility, so not a huge surprise, saying Etihad is going to top up an order for 10 787s, and Riyadh Air could top up an order for 25 to 30 more 787s beyond its current order book.
It already has like 40 on order. What are they doing buying more? They have what, one in service right now? Are they that bullish on their future?
It helps when you have that much capital behind you, I guess.
I guess, but wouldn't have expected an order from them, because didn't they only just like officially start service like an hour ago?
Last week, yes.
Huh. Okay.
We'll see whether or not those orders come to fruition. But based on what we're seeing so far, it seems like this year's Farnborough is going to be an exciting one to watch as far as orders are concerned. So keeping a close eye on that, and we'll bring you more as things start to roll in next week. Lufthansa's A350-1000, its first, came out of the paint shop wearing the special 100th anniversary livery. And I have to say, it looks very, very good, Jason.
I like it. It's like you took the version from the smaller jets and you just kind of stretched it in MS Paint a little bit, touched it up. It looks quite nice. It's not delivered yet. I think it's coming later this year, and they have a name for this aircraft, don't they? I think they've just named it Deutschland. I think they're very proud of this particular aircraft. They usually aren't Lufthansa's aircraft usually named after cities. not
Yes.
countries. So this one is just, it is Germany, the whole of Germany. It has assumed every other aircraft in the fleet, and there is now only this one.
They will all fly below this aircraft.
Mm-hmm.
In a shift over to Switzerland, today marks the 10th anniversary of the Airbus A220 or Bombardier C-Series aircraft in operation with Swiss. And it also marked the 10th anniversary of commercial operations.
Yeah, tenuous anniversary, since I'm pretty sure that the first few aircraft are no longer with us. So I guess that one's bittersweet.
Yeah, all of the A220-100s are done.
Yeah, that's very weird to celebrate that 10th anniversary. Hey, happy birthday, A220 C-Series, 10 years with Swiss, but don't look to celebrate with those aircraft anywhere. They're not happy.
They're done. But this week, Airbus and Pratt & Whitney said that the problems with the geared turbofan engine and the A220 groundings are over. There will be no aircraft on the ground because of Pratt & Whitney geared turbofan engine issues by the end of the year.
That's great. Ian, I also have a bridge here in Brooklyn to sell you. Are you interested?
Yes.
Yes? Oh, okay.
Maybe.
Because if you'd believe that, then you would also believe that Airbus and Pratt & Whitney engine issues are also behind them. I don't believe them. I think when we get to the end of the year, we're still going to see a number of aircraft grounded, including the ones we just talked about with Swiss and their A220s, which have been parted out. I don't think you can officially ever say that this issue is behind and there are no aircraft on ground, because there will be some aircraft never leaving the ground again because they've been dismantled and parted out to support the other aircraft still operating. So I guess this is technically correct, but it will never actually be the
best
case.
kind of correct.
Yeah, that's true. It got that bad that new aircraft had to be disassembled and taken apart just for their engines. So this is half true, half false, but I still don't quite believe that by the end of this year, we will truly be done with the Pratt & Whitney engines on Airbus aircraft. It just prove us wrong.
I'm just going to leave it till the end of the year and we'll see what happens. While we're talking about A220s, let's talk about airBaltic, because they've been struggling mightily of late. And the Baltic governments have been less inclined to support the airline this time around. Not saying they won't, because they probably will, but they're less inclined to do so. And this week, the Prime Minister of Latvia gave an interview with one of the TV stations. And I'm just going to read you the quote because I think it's fantastic. Quote, "I have a personal conviction that airBaltic lives on its own planet with its own laws and its own understanding. And this cannot be allowed to happen anymore."
I mean, in what regards? airBaltic has done a lot to make the best of the bad situation it finds itself in and will lease out its aircraft to literally anyone at this point. I'm pretty sure Petrimo Air could have flights operated by an airBaltic A220. What exactly do they mean? Just like financially, they're just on another planet? Or I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Basically, the argument here from Prime Minister Koolbergs is that the business plan that the airline came up with, where they were going to have a 100-strong A220 fleet and carry 10 million passengers a year.
That was a little bit ambitious, yes.
That's not the words that he used, but that's basically the gist of things.
Was that plan pre-Russia-Ukraine? I believe it was. So things have changed dramatically since then. And everything airBaltic has done since then has been to adapt and change its business plan to meet the new reality of airspace restrictions and generally passengers not wanting to go to that region. So we joke a lot about, hey, this flight's operated on behalf of whatever airline by airBaltic. And I mean, we don't mean that in an insulting way. You're like, oh, this is a trash airline. No, this is like I have a respect for this. They are doing what they need to do to bring in revenue and money using the fleet it has, while other airlines need that capacity. So I think this was quite smart. But yeah, going with the fleet of 100 A220s is and being the connecting airline in Europe, probably need to dust off a new business plan to meet the new reality, because that's not.
And that's what they're working on now. And with that new business plan, whenever it's presented, I believe it's supposed to be presented by the end of July. So they've got about 2 weeks left to figure this out. Then what the Prime Minister of Latvia is saying is, I don't think they're capable of operating without more cash. And we're not going to give them more cash unless they come up with a new business plan.
That new business plan is probably going to be getting gobbled up by the Lufthansa Group, as happens to the best of us.
Who among us hasn't been purchased by the Lufthansa Group at some point in time? Let's shift over to other airlines trying to figure out how to run their businesses. JetBlue, for its part, wants all of the gates in Fort Lauderdale.
Sure, they can have
Give me all the gates.
Go for it.
JetBlue is trying to obtain up to 30 gates in Fort Lauderdale, more than filling the void left by Spirit.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's Fort Lauderdale is an interesting airport. It's not one you hear much about. It's not one of the typical East Coast overcapacity, overstrained airport like either Boston or pick a New York airport or even Philly. It's just kind of there, operates mostly fine. This makes sense for JetBlue. I like it. That's certainly a lot of gates. Fort Lauderdale's terminals are a little all over the place, varying quality, varying sizes. There was a time where JetBlue had just its own terminal, and they have certainly spilled out quite a bit to other parts of that airport. But there is a void that Spirit left, as that was its home hub airport. Yeah, if this is what JetBlue wants to focus on, it's probably better than trying to focus on New York, because that has never worked.
New York is just so very confusing because it seems like something that should work, right?
Yeah.
For every airline.
Nobody can quite do that, but
I'm backing my way into GOL's launch into wide-body aircraft here, where you have all of these airlines thinking, I can make New York work. New York's big enough for everybody.
You know what they say, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, but no one can really make it here.
Which is just super fascinating.
Yeah, it's very different than LAX, which no one truly dominates LAX because there's too much competition. Everyone is there. That's not the case in New York. United has its crown jewel at Newark. Delta has its fortress hub. That's probably not a fortress hub, but a mega hub at JFK and LaGuardia. But there's plenty of other airlines, and no one really, I would say, truly dominates New York, either financially or operationally. It's always just been a mess. And certainly JetBlue has tried so many different ways to make New York work over the years. And yeah, this isn't the end of JetBlue in New York, of course, but they are clearly focusing their attention elsewhere. And it's probably a wise decision.
Well, GOL, for its part, says we're going to start wide-body operations and we're going to start flying to New York. And that's exactly what they did this week for the first time.
I feel like we talked about GOL getting A330s in its fleet very recently from its ownership group.
I suppose they haven't ordered them, but they've been allocated them.
Yes, they were gifted.
Yeah. At the moment, though, they have the Wamos A330 that is now in GOL livery operating between Brazil and New York. And they're looking to expand that relatively soon as they take more wide-body aircraft. But again, you know, it's interesting to me that they chose New York first, but sure, why not? Does.
This is not the order placement that we talked about in episode 342, which is Abra Group ordered 7 A330neos that would be placed, quote, according to market-driven operational and financial opportunities at the time of their integration. No, this is an A330-200, not even a very new aircraft. This is an almost 20-year-old aircraft, originally started life at China Southern, most recently operated for Wamos Air, and now finds itself at GOL, I believe, at the same exact configuration. So this is the start of wide-body operations for GOL, but it is certainly not the final form.
Your ride will be much more comfortable and better if you can hold out for the A330neos.
Yeah, nobody ever looked at a Wamos Air A330 and said, oh yeah, sign me up. No, you only fly on a Wamos Air A330 if your airline is in a bit of a pinch.
Oh boy. Well, they're using it to get to where they need to go. A Danish court has fined KLM approximately $450,000 for 2023 radio advertisements that the court says were misleading. Those ads, Jason, were about sustainable aviation fuel.
It always is, isn't it?
And this is not the first time that KLM has been docked by a court for advertising around sustainability and sustainable aviation fuel. The Danish court says that the phrases, quote, a big step towards traveling a little more sustainably, and, quote, now a lot more sustainable aviation fuel is included in all our tickets, was misleading to the extent and significance of KLM's sustainability initiatives.
Yes, because as we know, sustainable aviation fuel is kind of a fever dream right now. It exists, but like not really. And when it does, not to any significant amount of fuel being used in aircraft. Hey, good on the courts for calling out nonsense.
So these advertisements were focused around an initiative at Amsterdam Airport that KLM was spearheading to add a percentage of SAF to the fueling system and fuel all flights based on that percent. Jason, can you guess what percentage that number is?
Is it less than 1?
It's not less than 1, but it's also not more than 1.
Oh, okay. 1.2%.
No, it was 1%.
Oh, okay.
Right on the number.
Wow. Yeah, fairly insignificant. It's not nothing, but it may as well be nothing.
So a lot more sustainable aviation fuel. This is like the window seat on United. Like, I don't think anyone would assume that 1% is a lot more.
Truth in advertising. It's a real thing. And especially when it comes down to green initiatives or things along those lines, it seems like courts, especially in Europe, do not take kindly to stretching the truth from 1% to a substantial percent, let's say.
Yeah. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is O'Hare Airport.
Oh, your favorite.
Yes. The FAA has extended the flight reductions at O'Hare, not a little bit, but for an entire year.
Ian, I got news for you. Those restrictions are never going to go away. If New York is any indication what temporary restrictions are put in place because flight operations are just too crazy, they ain't never going away.
I contend that when we build the next 12 runways, that will solve the problem.
Oh, yeah. Another 12 runways. Just annex Milwaukee, and it'll be fine.
You'll be able to taxi up to Milwaukee. No problem.
Finally. It always felt like it, but that airport's just a mess. Home of the world's longest taxi times by far, I'm sure. Somebody should look into that and actually quantify that.
So it's funny you mentioned that, Jason.
Oh.
Because somebody did.
Oh, did you?
Well, I helped. WGN looked into this. Local news here in Chicago looked into this. And they found that in 2018, the average time from the gate to the runway was 22 and a half minutes.
That's crazy. That's the average time.
The average time was 22 and a half minutes. This year, the average time is now 28 minutes. Taxi in times after landing have risen from 13.6 minutes in 2018 to 18 minutes now.
Oof. That's not getting better anytime soon, is it? And I know there's a lot of taxiway construction and all that, but that also is not going away anytime soon.
16% of flights have taxi times of more than 40 minutes.
I want to know.
10% of arriving flights have more than 30-minute taxi times.
I want to know what percentage of flights have a longer taxi in time at O'Hare than the flight itself. It's got to be a number, even if it's 1% even, like we just talked about. There's got to be a couple. There are some extremely short flights into O'Hare and some extremely long taxi times. And I bet those flights from Milwaukee or South Bend, I bet a good number of them spend more time taxiing into the gate than they did in the air.
Well, I'll be on a flight in 2 weeks. Average is 33 minutes in the air.
Oh.
The block time is 1 hour and 8 minutes.
There it is. Yep. Keep us up to date on that one.
I certainly will. more to come on that particular flight. Let's close the show with a discussion of my favorite story from this past week, which is the friendly wager between Norse and British Airways. Norse backing the Norwegian team, of course, British Airways backing England. England beat Norway, sending them home from the World Cup. And as part of that wager, Norse turned their social media accounts not over to British Airways, but all of the branding became BA branding.
Good stuff.
I thought that was really, really well done. It looked like a lot of fun. And not to lose out, as we talked about a few weeks ago, where Norse was adding multiple flights to Miami for the England-Norway game, they also said, hey, we don't need to be playing to add extra flights from a few places. So they added extra flights to Atlanta for today's game.
Yeah, turns out that Norse actually operates most of its flight not from Norway at all, but to London. And if England moves on, as they did, Norse is going to add on more flights, and they did. I did love how quickly Norse went from really humble in their email marketing and say, I quote, fair play, the better team went through, while announcing their next flight for England, and then almost immediately turned heel and put Instagram posts up with, they said, consider it an assist. And they had the tail of a Norse 787 and the tail of a Norwegian 737. And on the tail of the Norwegian 73 is always like a legend of Norwegian history or whatever. There's always a person of notoriety. And on the tail of this aircraft, they had the spider cam with subtext under it saying, man of the match. And if you watch that match, you will know exactly what we're talking about. So I love how they went from really humble to really quite petty very quickly. And I'm 100% here for that.
It was all in good fun, and I'm really happy to see some airlines getting into it. So we'll see how the England-Argentina match turns out, and we'll see who ends up playing Spain over the weekend. And I'm sure if there's any more airline hijinks to be had, we'll talk about that on next week's show. But for the moment, Jason, I'm going to let you go watch the second half of the game.
Anything could happen still.
Anything could happen, and anything will. And we will be back next week with some more AvTalk. For now, this is episode 379 of AvTalk. I am Ian Petchnick, here as always with
Jason Rabinowitz. Thanks for listening.